Too hot for TV.
Welcome back to Doctor Who Too Hot for TV. We are the podcast that looks at all things Doctor Who Extended Universe. Today, I'm joined once again by Nigel Bromley. Nigel, how are you?
I am very excited to be with you.
Excellent. It's wonderful to have you back. And today, we're going to look at two quite distinct things that, you know, are sort of audio-related. Well, they're not audio-related. They are audios. Why don't you tell everybody what you've chosen to listen to?
Well, inadvertently, we are going on a little nostalgia trip to a period in the show's history just after it seemed to stop, when the great and the good of the show kept it alive. So the first thing we're going to look at is Jon Pertwee's, or Joan Putrid, if you've listened to it, An Evening with Jon Pertwee, recorded on his tour of the United Kingdom. And I was just explaining to the so I'll explain to everybody else here that I've got my original cassette, and not that I'm a nutter, but I've got the receipt from when I bought it, and I bought it on the 21st of July, 1996, and it was £7.99.
Amazing. What a bargain.
Yes.
And then once we've done that, what is the next thing we'll be looking at?
We'll be listening, reviewing the BBC release, which I had on compact disc, which is about 8 years later, and it's called Doctor Who at the BBC. How imaginative. How did they think that title up?
Who knows? Now, I would like to know, what role does radio, audio dramas, audio documentaries just play in your life in general? Because it's something that we as Doctor Who fans are very used to consuming, but it's not always the case for people. So outside of Doctor Who, do you listen to a lot of audio stuff?
Yes. Yes. I should have answered the first question and not just said yes, shouldn't I? Anyway, we'll edit that. What a good question, Dylan. Thank you very much. Now I've turned into an MP, haven't I? No. But I think the answer we really wanted, the question we should really be asking. I am ancient, as we've established in the previous podcast, and I was very excited by Genesis of the Daleks on LP, which I still own, obviously. You only got to watch the TV occasionally. You had to watch what your dad wanted you to watch. Fortunately, my dad liked Doctor Who, but I also had to sit through other crap. So the only thing to go and enjoy was sit in your room and listen to the radio, and I discovered Radio 4 and Radio 4 comedy programs, and I got to love the sort of spoken word and intelligent and clever stuff. So, anyway, we had Doctor Who, the Pescatons, didn't we? We had a little bit of that come along the way. And I would scour the Radio Times, radio listings, as much as the TV listings, like we all did, to see if there was anything vaguely sci-fi, Doctor Who-y, what actors were in what plays.
Yeah. Which,
probably meant that Big Finish slipped easily into my repertoire.
So, being from sort of the VHS generation, there wasn't like a huge amount of audio stuff in my life as a kid. Like, there was the odd audio book and things like that you listened to when you were very young. And then my parents would inevitably, when we were going on a holiday to Devon and had to drive like 6 hours or something somewhere, they'd find something for us to put on in the car. But it was like audio to me, until the podcast came along and I could listen to all sorts of stuff, was BBV and then Big Finish. And I think that's the only... I listen to the odd audio book now of other things, but generally, like, I think Doctor Who is sort of my exclusive...
Oh, really?
Source of... Or Big Finish, should I say, because I do listen to other ranges from them.
I think 50% of the cassettes in my father's car were spoken word cassettes.
Right.
And he listened to Radio 4 inveterately. So I got it from, this is how, in about 1982, when the Sony Walkman came along, I put one down on my Christmas list. And my father, who was an older father, I was the product of his second marriage.
Right.
So he was an older chap and never owned a pair of jeans, proper gentleman.
Yeah.
And he set about buying me the JVC cheap knockoff Sony Walkman,
Of
obviously.
course.
Value for money. And
Yeah.
he went into the local record shop and was horrified because there was no trad jazz available. Didn't recognise a single modern band, and the only thing he saw he recognised was a compilation of Tony Hancock's Hancock's Half Hour. So Hancock's Half Hour was massive on the radio in the 1950s. 30 years later, that was the most current thing he could see to buy me. And that's what I listened to on Christmas Day 1982. Well, it wasn't Ultravox or the Human League, it was bloody Tony Hancock. Anyway, that got me into radio comedy, actually.
Well, weird you say that, because I remember the first video that I ever owned, and it was a compilation of Watch with Mother from like the 50s or something. Because we'd got a video player. My mom had got a video player for Christmas, and then we'd all been gifted a video each. And because, I was a child, so it's like, it was an archive release, and it's a weird thing that I don't think I was into Doctor Who at that point, but I'm like, I must have been into like Thundercats or something, and then we go, we'll get him a Thundercats video. It's like, no, What's with Mother, the best of, and it's like,
so we've already established our parents were hopeless.
Yeah, well, exactly. And I actually find, even trying to explain the concept of what Big Finish is to somebody my age who is not a Doctor Who fan, like they'll go, oh, so it's an audiobook. I'm like, no, it's a play. And then they're like, oh, so it's like the soundtrack of the TV thing, or just the music. I'm like, no, it's all the people that used to be in Doctor Who still making Doctor Who. And they're like, without pictures. It's like,
yes,
it's a bizarre concept.
Yeah, absolutely the same, because I'm constantly trying to sell it to norm. I'm still trying to sell Doctor Who to norms. And you go, there's a full cast audio drama. And the blank expression you get back. And you go, no, if you love Tom Baker, you can listen to Tom Baker. If you love any of them, you can listen to them. They're all there. Sylvester McCoy is brilliant. And they just look at you and go,
my girlfriend isn't a huge Doctor Who fan or anything, but she does like the RTD1 era. And she saw one of these sort of clickbaity articles saying, oh, Christopher Eccleston and Billy Piper are back. And she was like, why haven't you told me about this? I was like, it's audio. And she was like, oh, I'm not interested, because it's not something that's ever figured in her life, really. And I think I had somebody on the podcast recently, but he was saying he's about my age, and he just got really into the Archers when he was younger, so audio's always featured in his life. But I think if you're not and I used to go out with a girl who used to listen to the Archers religiously, but I think it is that thing of, if it doesn't get you at an early age, you're not going to say at age 30 or 40 start listening to radio plays, unless you're a nerd who is suddenly presented with a treasure trove like Big Finish.
I think you're absolutely right. I think it's a really good analysis. I got into it. I think Hancock got me into it. I discovered Radio 4, and I'm sorry I haven't a clue, which is the Antidotes panel games. Hilarious. Do you say, when you're trying to sell Big Finish to norms, all norms must die, do you say the pictures are better on radio as well? Because that's sort of the law, isn't it?
It is the law. It is the law. Now, you've awoken a memory. I have listened to a lot of I'm Sorry I Haven't a Clue, and that is because I think when I was a teenager, you lent my dad a tape of it, and we did listen to that in the car, and I then went and sought out more. I haven't listened to it for years, but there was a point, especially when the internet first arrived and you could download things illegally, where I had a big folder full of loads of I'm Sorry I Haven't a Clue, and I used to, I guess sort of pre-podcast it would be, I'd have them on my MP3 player, and when I was wondering about doing whatever, every now and then I'd stick one of those on.
Oh, that's amazing. I have probably still got that double cassette tape in the loft. It featured Willie Rushton, didn't it?
Yes, it did, yeah. But that's also another memory that I have of, as I said, these wouldn't be regular things, but if we were going on holiday somewhere with a long drive, there'd be motorway service stations and things like that, and
Yeah,
W.H.
they'd be
Smith.
for sale, wouldn't they?
Yeah, and there'd be like, 3 episodes of Dad's Army, or like even later on Little Britain and League of Gentlemen and things like that. I know they had radio versions of them, but also just soundtracks of the telly. Even in the late 90s, that was still a thing. And obviously, as Doctor Who fans, we not only have the missing audios, but they started doing narrated versions of the ones that existed.
There used to be. And here's one of them now. I'm now displaying to the audience at home the mystery thing, which is a cassette box. And there was a man that used to record Doctor Who off video and put them onto audio cassettes. Like I'm waving around. And I've got loads of them. And I drive around in cars listening to Doctor Who. And I still go occasionally on eBay and just see if there's any more for sale. I love listening to Doctor Who while I'm driving around. Isn't that weird? And a lot of them are really good. You don't need to see it to hear it.
If you are a Spotify user and pay for Spotify Premium, they have so much Doctor Who on there that you get for your sort of £9.90 a month. It's like Doctor Who.
Big Finish Doctor Who.
They've got the first 50 Big Finish. But then they've got all the readings of the Target books, all things like Doctor Who at the BBC. That's where I listen to this. Some of the old audio books like State of Decay. It's got Paradise of Death. All those things are on there. There is thousands of hours, so there must be people still listening to them as well.
That's brilliant. Sidebar to the whole episode: Tom Baker reading State of Decay. What a fucking disappointment that is.
It is. It's an odd thing.
It's like zero performance.
Yeah, and it's like, because the Pescatons is great. Exploration Earth's okay for like a kid's show and things like that. And then you come to this, you think, oh, this is going to be brilliant. Because his readings of later Target books are also really good, but it is just like, he's bored on one afternoon and can't wait to get back out into Soho and have another pint of mild.
It's got depressed post-Doctor Who Tom Baker going back to it, and he doesn't want to, and he doesn't want to be there. Yeah.
In the 90s, they did about 6 sort of readings of Target books that condensed down to about an hour and a half, something like that. And I had the Peter Davison reads Warriors of the Deep. I'd already read the book.
Oh.
I'd never seen the episode. And then there was sort of some, they added music to it and stuff like that. And it was really atmospheric. So for years, I just couldn't wait to see Warriors of the Deep.
Oh, God.
I loved the Target
Dylan.
I loved the reading of it. And I was like, this is a classic. I mean, it's got two returning monsters, together.
Yeah.
And if you look at the pictures of it as a 12-year-old or whatever,
looks great.
It looks great. It's only when you sort of see the Merca wobbling about and the overlit things. But in my mind, it was fantastic. It's like, the classic one people always talk about, if to go on even more of a tangent, is the target of Doctor Who and the Doomsday Weapon versus the actual quality of Colony in Space. Because you read that book and it's like Malcolm Holt paints a vivid picture of a dystopian world and what life's back on Earth, and to make people want to go and do that. And then you watch it and, it was one of the later Pertwee DVD and VHS releases because it's not that highly thought of. But the story's there, and it's even more there in the Target. So,
who was it that said the other day? Was it on your podcast? I know it was Nick Briggs on Big Finish where he was saying that Nightmare of Eden is actually a brilliant script and a really good story. Yeah. And they remade it of Caves of Androzani. It's just...
that does sort of make sense.
One production company took great care with the ideas and the others did.
Yeah, but now it's like a lot of people say about Horns of Nimon and Nightmare and Eden. It's like, put them on at Christmas and they're like a panto. And they're great fun, but it doesn't quite work. You wouldn't show it to somebody and go, this is what classic Doctor Who
This is doing. The creme de la creme of Doctor Who. No.
Right, should we jump into Jon Pertwee?
We run out of time. Jon Pertwee delay of you.
Indeed.
Too hot for TV.
Jon Pertwee,
I'm waving it around.
An Evening with the Doctor, was released in June 1996 from a company called Listen for Pleasure. Now, news at the time, Jon Pertwee had just died. He died the month before it came out. So
Oh,
it was quite a timely release. Other news, they were pondering the future of the TV show because the TV movie had just happened and the UK ratings were great. The US ratings,
and he talks about it a little
yeah.
bit,
He
whether
says,
it'll come back or not, which I
yeah.
felt a little bit was quite moving.
Yeah. And then Virgin Publishing were still unsure whether their license would be renewed to do new Doctor Who fiction, which ultimately it wasn't.
Oh.
Releases-wise, we had the Radio Times comic strip story, Dreadnought, from their short run of Doctor Who. It's a half a strip comic that was in the pages of Radio Times for about 40 weeks, featuring the Eighth Doctor after the
I
TV
remember.
movie.
Yes. Yeah.
We had the new adventure God Engine featuring the Seventh Doctor, Roz and Chris, the missing adventure The Killing Grounds featuring the Sixth Doctor and his very short-lived companion Grant, and the comic strip was Ground Zero featuring the Seventh Doctor and Ace, in which they killed off Ace because they needed to tidy things up before the TV movie.
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
Now, my name is Jon Pertwee, which it isn't. Not truly. My real name is Jon Pertwee de Layevo, and I hope you're very impressed. I come from a long line that my mother should never have listened to, a French line of Huguenots. The majority of my family was, in fact, Catholic in France. In 1865, they pushed out the Protestants. And there was one Protestant, a man called Georges de Pertwee de Layevo, and he moved into Suffolk. And the large Pertwee clan, as it's known today, is the result of his personal athleticism. And nobody could pronounce the name properly, Pertwee de Layevo, Perthuis. They couldn't pronounce it, so the illiterate English pronounced it Pertwis. So it was duly changed to Pertwwe. With the result is they called it Pee-wee, etc., etc. Now, I have here in my autobiography, Moon Boots and Dinner Suits, which you can't buy any longer, it's out of print. It says, due to the inability to pronounce the name Pertwee, other than Pertwis, it was changed to Pertwee. This proved a pointless exercise, as over the years, even in England, I have been subjected to the following interpretations of my name, the veracity of which I swear to, having avidly filed them away over the years. And here's a list of them. Tom Peetweet, Jon Pertwee, Mr. Twee, Mr. Bert Wee, which I like, John Pee-wee, Miss Jane Partwick, Master J. Peewitt, Mr. Petweek, Joan Pestwick, J. Pertiny, John Between, I like that, and Mr. and Mrs. John Perky. And when I was in America, I was working on Broadway, and I used to walk down Broadway, and I looked up, and there it was, Jon Pertwee, and I was so proud of the fact my name was in lights. And after 6 months, I walked into the theatre one day, and there was the stage doorkeeper, sitting at the end of the passage, smoking his big stogie, and he said, "Hey, Jan." And I paid no attention, of course, my name not being Jan, and I walked on merrily into the theatre. And he said, hey, Jan. And I said, who, me? He said, yeah, Jan Putrid, there's a letter for you.
a very peculiar time. Like, it's a time of, like, there's still this great hope that the TV movie might lead to something more and we might get this big budget series. And then at the same time, like, sort of the timing of Jon Pertwee passing away, it was a very sort of, mixed emotions for Doctor Who fans.
Well, both of these releases we're going to discuss, and I can't quite put my finger on it, but it's a particular moment in Who history.
Almost like a hopelessness at the time.
Yeah, I felt, particularly with the next thing we're going to talk about, I felt so in love with the programme, and you have all of these legendary voices talking about Doctor Who, Jon Pertwee being one of them in this, and his hopes for the future. And other people talking about what they'd done and what it had created and how popular it was and how the kids still loved it. And so there was this, on the one hand, outpouring of love for this great programme. And on the other hand, as you say, this sort of wish it would come back, but a hopelessness and a sort of general belief it probably won't. And it was done.
Yeah,
and it's quite a moving, sad time, really.
Yeah, as you said, John mentions it in this, and he goes, "Oh well, it sounds like Spielberg's going to do it." And I don't know when this was exactly recorded, but I'm assuming...
I can tell you that.
Ah, excellent.
It was recorded at the Haymarket Theatre, at Basingstoke and Greenwich Theatre in London, 5th and the 9th of July, 1995, and he was about 76.
So that makes sense because the TV movie happens quite quickly. It's around January of 96 that Paul McGann's cast and he gets his DWM cover. So before that, saying, oh, well, Spielberg might do it, well, like that was what the papers were saying.
Yes.
And,
yeah.
Nothing had been announced. It was just endless rumours and endless sort of... And I know we've sort of skipped right to the end of his thing, but he literally talks about, oh, Dudley Moore will probably do it.
Yeah.
Hopefully it's not
Yeah.
David. All the cliches.
Yeah.
And then Paul McGann's cast 6 months later, essentially.
Yeah, yeah. And when did John pass away? Was
It was May, I think.
Oh, was it just before it was broadcast? Because they did a tribute to him at the end frame.
Yes, there was a caption, and I remember my mum going, "Oh, they got that in there quick." Yeah, he died on the 20th of May '96, so the TV movie must have been the end of May.
So I listened to this posthumously.
Yeah,
he'd gone.
Now we hadn't met at this point, had we? We met at the Longley event, possibly this year. I
think it was this year. Yeah, yeah.
At the beginning of this year, we went to a Doctor Who convention, me, my dad, and Jackson, in Birmingham, called AleCon, because it was originally in Aylesbury, but they moved it to Birmingham. And
keep the name.
There was horrendous amounts of snow, and lots of the guests couldn't get there, but Jon Pertwee made it. And because they had time to fill, they let him do this show for 2 hours in the middle of one afternoon.
So you've seen it?
So I saw it, yeah.
Oh, I'm so jealous.
Because he didn't... I think he did do it at cons, but he used to do a shrunk-down version.
Yeah.
That was sort of a little bit of the beginning and then all the Doctor Who stuff at the end, because he knew that's what people wanted to see.
Yeah.
But because they had time, he did the whole 2 hours.
It's brilliant. He's a great raconteur.
He is, absolutely.
What's fascinating is on the surface level, he's a great raconteur. He met lots of interesting people and he had a really interesting career. And it's a good listen. And I still use the story of Colonel Lucian Gore and good God, man, you had it last. We use that in our house. Every time you can't find something, one of us will say, good God, man, you had it last. I hadn't got together with the lady that became my wife at this point in 1996. We did it in November. We got together, so wow. I must have inflicted her listening to this at some point. Yeah. So on the surface level, it's a great raconteur. It's great fun. It's Jon Pertwee. He does Wurzel Gummidge voices. He does Doctor Who. He does all the voices, Svensson and everything, and it's brilliant. If you've then read anything about him or listened to Barry Letts and then you listen to it again, you are struck by the egocentricity and how he is at the centre of every story and the hero of every story. And in fact, on the next CD that we talk about, he also claims so much that he's probably total bollocks. But I guess that was just the kind of man he was.
He was an all-round entertainer, and I know that's a cliche. But he was, people like, he talks about it a bit on this, but like Patrick Troughton and Tom Baker weren't doing the after-dinner speaking and things like that. So whereas a lot of Doctor Who people hone their anecdotes at conventions over the years, he's been doing these after-dinner speeches for years and getting the laughs and not getting the laughs. And, he talks about going to like a suitcase factory for lunch and things like that. Yeah. And it's like, this is his living at this point. Yeah. He talks about all these great successes he's been involved in, but there are interviews with people going, he was desperate for one more success towards the end of his life. Yeah. So he was doing the chat show things. He was doing like early morning television, going around telling his stories and being very charming and charismatic. But he was the sort of person that was built to go on Wogan and tell these stories for 15 minutes, get huge laughs, and everybody loves him because it's one of the most exciting people from their childhood, and they're now in their 30s or whatever and want to see it. So it's like, this is his hustle. This is how he makes his money, by telling these stories. So never let the truth get in the way of a good story.
A good story? Well, I certainly don't.
Well, exactly.
So and it is extraordinary life from humble beginnings and, not very nice parents and awful public schools through the war and radio and radio comedy and films, British films, Doctor Who, Wurzel Gummidge, Who Done It. He was a big star in the 70s. I mean, it's just fascinating. So I got a huge amount of affection. And he was a big doctor in the 90s as well. Yeah. He was everywhere and he was at conventions.
I'm not a huge Pertwee era fan. I'm more a fan of those people at conventions in the 90s.
Yeah.
And like seeing him and Nick and the men from Unit when they showed up together.
Yeah.
And just like there was something about that, the omnipresentness of Pertwee. And I think one of the reasons I'm not a huge fan of the era is because there was so much Pertwee when I was a kid that I've kind of overexposed myself to those stories. And as a result, though, I really love the Third Doctor range at Big Finish because it's new Jon Pertwee.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think the 90s was obviously, it was a very fertile creative time. But going to conventions, it was the same, dozen legends from the show. And eventually, all of their anecdotes became like their hit record. We all wanted them to tell the story of Nick Courtney and the iPad, John Leeson and Tom Baker and doing the Times crossword together, all of that stuff. And we must have heard it twice a year, every year for a decade, and probably OD'd on it. And I haven't gone back to it for 20 years until listening to these for this podcast. And it's been like meeting lovely old friends.
Also, the Doctor Who anecdotes, I've heard them time and time again on DVDs and things, but it was nice to hear Jon talk about his life, like before and after Doctor Who. Even if these stories are built up, I was like, oh no, I have heard these stories before many years ago, but it's nice to be reminded of the broader picture.
Yeah.
I also think there's something interesting that happens in the 90s, as you say, this sort of affection for it. John and Tom, they were these larger-than-life characters who told these big, bombastic stories, whereas the 80s Doctors they were a bit younger. They were of a different generation of actors where they were actors rather than entertainers as well.
Yes, and they were acting still.
Yeah, absolutely, yeah. But now, when you see the 80s Doctors who are in their, at least two of them are in their 80s, they're these larger-than-life, eccentric characters in their later years. They've sort of, when you see them at conventions, they very much develop their convention personas and they suddenly seem a lot more a lot less serious and a lot more eccentric. And they've also obviously honed their stories. So it's kind of like the final form for your Doctor Who actor to end up like that.
So I'm an actor, I'm Doctor Who, I take it seriously. I finish being Doctor Who. I carry on with an acting career. I may or may not reach such great heights. I mean, Peter Davison's never stopped working. And then at some point, I get a little bit old. I do Big Finish. I do a lot of conventions. It's my major source of income, and I become a raconteur.
Yeah, exactly.
Right, well.
But if you look at Tom Baker being interviewed when he's in Doctor Who, it's a very different kettle of fish to Tom Baker when we saw him at conventions.
Well, and in fact, on the next CD, on the CD we're about to talk about, Doctor the BBC, there's him very early recording the Sontaran experiment.
Yeah.
Being serious. There's him during 1977, talking about it's not really an acting role. Yeah. And then there's him after he's left, talking about Douglas Adams.
Yeah.
And he leaves on that wonderful... I'm a big star in Abu Dhabi.
Yeah, exactly. So it's the final form for all of them.
Excellent. I'm going to turn into that myself.
So it's full of embellishments. I was struck by the self-importance that he adds to himself. It's always like, oh, I decided we were going to do the Navy lark, and so we put it together.
Yes, I know!
But we do get a little bit of the self-effacing John when he talks about his gotcha, and you're just a little bit like, oh, okay, maybe he's capable of not taking himself too seriously, but at the same time, that was shown to like 13 million people on television. So you can
got to take it on the chin, haven't you, John? He was furious, John. Yeah, his self-importance. I think, though, back to becoming a raconteur, if your means of a living is a product and that product is you've somehow got to protect yourself from the reality of the world, which is some people won't like you, and somehow still go out and perform. And, quite a thing to stand on stage for 2.5 hours and just tell some stories about your life and make it vaguely interesting.
And it is interesting. It's a good 2.5 hours. And I hadn't heard it in many years, and I chuckled along to a lot of it, even the familiar stuff, because it's just nice to hear him tell it.
It is, absolutely. I loved it. I really enjoyed re-listening to it. And I'm going to spend the next few weeks practicing my Svensson and saying, Jeden, nixty rom de bumpit. I just don't know how I can get it into normal conversation.
You can't. You'll get sectioned. Do you think we get much of the sort of real Jon Pertwee, the more sort of personal side in it?
Not a lot, no. I think there's a hint at the end of the unhappiness and frustration and his desire to do a character role.
Yeah.
And his frustration that he'd done his best bit of acting in something that nobody had seen. But I don't think there is a bit, isn't there? Because we know his father was cold, and he talks about being expelled from everything, which is a comedic way of making light of probably 20 odd years of feeling a bit of a failure, I would think, and not fitting in. So I think there's glimpses behind the curtain, behind the velvet tape curtain.
And when he talks about his time in the war, and he always tells quite funny stories about the war, and then you go, oh no, and then my 2 shipmates were blown up, and then it's it's like, oh, so he lived through a very horrendous experience. And he did say at the end of it, I was terribly sad, but he's got a way of saying it that doesn't let on any emotions in any way. It's like, because it's sort of part of this performance. And there's a moment where he talks about his first wife, Jean Marsh, and just goes, I met her, I married her, she didn't want to have kids, she wanted to be an actor, so we split up. And it's like, that must have been quite a difficult experience for both of you as well, but it's all just sort of brushed over.
He's made it into a light story, hasn't he?
Yeah.
And maybe that's a generational thing, that people of that generation they did not display their real emotions, and they made light of everything.
Yeah, so, absolutely. Yeah. It was either make light of things or be angry, and you can't be angry for a living. I mean, you can now. That's what LBC News is about, right?
There's a whole party dedicated to being angry.
That is true. What about the coverage of Doctor Who here compared to the rest of his sort of life and acting life?
I think probably in period when I would probably have been disappointed that in fact, I was going to say his biggest success, but one of his 3 big successes was treated with relative lightness. And there was more I'd like to have heard. There were a lot, and we heard at conventions many more funny anecdotes. I mean, I'd love to know how true the story is that Tenniel Evans, I think, suggested he should be Doctor Who, and he phoned his agent for that anecdote. I'd love to know how true that is.
He said that he'd been on the list for 18 months, and I'm sure Patrick Troughton only decided to leave about midway through, like, the Space Pirates or the Crotons or something like that. So he was on that list for tops 4 or 5 months.
Yeah, and I think probably 4 or 5 weeks.
Yeah.
Because they weren't even sure it was going to get renewed, were they?
Yeah.
Yeah, so there's all of that. And then he just skips through. He doesn't really mention Katie Manning, does he? He doesn't he doesn't talk about the brig apart from saying what a wonderful man too much. And he's unflappable. So he skirts through a lot of that. And he skirts through Wurzel as well, which was another big success.
Yeah.
Which, I didn't realise he was at the heart of that, and that made all that happen.
I do wonder, I guess he's figured that he's got to pitch this at a broader audience, and it can't just be Doctor Who fans showing up, although they do. And I guess the sort of Doctor Who fans that show up for it are going to go to conventions anyway and hear him do an hour on Doctor Who and get to ask him what his favourite monster is, or, why he never met the Cybermen and all the things that Doctor Who fans ask. So I guess it's more of like a career overview. But then, I mean, his first biography doesn't feature Doctor Who at all. And then it's about 15 years until the next one when he finally does cover it. And we did Tom Baker's autobiography on this a while ago, and he doesn't talk about Doctor Who much there.
No, that very upsetting that was. There were 3 anecdotes, weren't there, or something?
But I guess these are products, so Listen for Pleasure and then HarperCollins, who did Tom's book, that they want the autobiographies or
maximum sales.
They want the life story of these people. We're not in an era yet where you can get like a whole book written about someone like John Nathan Turner, or a book just written on like a very specific era of Doctor Who that does like a deep critical dive plus all the anecdotes and things like that. We want to sell 200,000 copies of this because you were Doctor Who, but people don't want to know about Doctor Who. They want to know about your entire career.
And he's talking about a career, I guess, that most people who were in the room, let's say they were in their 40s, they would have remembered Waterlog Spa 35 years before that, as much as Doctor Who, as much as Wurzel. So, it makes sense to cover it all off probably about the same level of depth on everything.
Yeah. It is this weird thing, though, that all these things he's talking about, that I recognise like a handful of them. Obviously, Doctor Who, Wurzel, the Navy Lark, and a couple of others. But he talks about, I did this play. And I'm like, I've got no idea what that is. But I imagine he wouldn't have mentioned it if it wasn't a big play at the time. And perhaps it still is. I'm not a big theatre person. But it's weird to hear these things talked about in sort of...
Casual. Well, they're thrown away because everybody's heard of that play.
Whereas I need to go, what is Will Any Gentleman? You know, it's like, it's just not something that's on my cultural radar. Whereas...
Do you know, I don't know either. I assume it's some sort of farce, West End farce, because they were huge in the 70s, weren't they?
I imagine so. Do we have anything else we want to say on An Evening with the Doctor?
It's a very pleasant way to spend a couple of hours in the company of a very charismatic, troubled fellow.
Yeah.
But a great Doctor.
It was really nice to hear him again, not playing the Doctor, not talking about Doctor Who for a lot of it, and just go, it's a weird thing to say I miss him, because I didn't know him, but he was a present figure in my childhood that I watched regularly live and would always, he'd sign an autograph and things like that. And it's like, as you say, it's nice to be in his company many, many years after his death.
It is. It's absolutely. And we have to remember, although Pat Troughton was brilliant, the show was in crisis.
Yeah, absolutely.
And this, can you imagine the show's in crisis? If there was fandom back in 1970, we're bringing it back. We're totally changing the format. We're basing it on Earth, more serious, and yet we're bringing some comic actor that's known for silly voices in. You can imagine the headlines.
Yeah.
But he turned it into a big success.
Absolutely.
Along with everybody else that worked on it.
We wouldn't be sat here now.
No.
Because I wouldn't have gotten to Doctor Who if it was just 6 years of something that was on in the 60s.
No, same. Same, because it wouldn't have been on when we were growing up. It wouldn't have had that moment that we all have where somebody says, watch this, you might like it. And you go, oh, wow.
Yeah, and it's like, I imagine if someone said to me, like if Doctor Who had finished at the War Games and they were repeating it, they were repeating The Mind Robber or something, and I was 8 years old, I would have gone, I don't want to watch that. Why would I watch it?
No. So it's like Doctor Who coming back in a couple of years' time in an unrecognisable format with somebody that he's the last person you would think of being cast as the Doctor, and it's
Billy Piper.
Is she known as a comic actress that does silly voices? It's Miranda. We've got Miranda coming back in a velvet jacket, falling away through the Daleks.
I would love somebody to write or do a documentary that went a bit more into the sort of insecure personal side of Pertwee, because I do think he was very insecure and overcompensating with his showmanship. But I wonder whether perhaps we're a little bit past the stage, like how many... His family is still alive. Well, his kids are still alive.
Yeah.
Well, I think his wife passed away a few years ago. It's like, what stories are...
It's gone, hasn't it?
The more personal stories are dying out. And Katie Manning has always said she's got stories she'll never tell. But she's never going to tell them. And, like, bless her, she's not getting any younger. Like, if she was going to tell, she would have.
Look, I think I think you're right. It would have been fascinating to have a sort of docudrama about the real... I imagine some tantruming and a lot of difficulty went on. And I think Barry Letts hints at it in his book. He's slightly pointed, but he doesn't give any colour behind it. But and there's little clips, there's little moments when it sneaks out, when he talks about Pat Troughton not giving him a cue. And his first reaction is, I'm the Doctor.
But
not, please give me a cue, could you? And being stroppy about it and shouting. And I thought, I bet you would.
And the stories about him and Katie perhaps getting a little too close. It's why they bloody love the Demons, because they were away for the weekend or a couple of weeks with...
Were they reversing the polarity of the neutron flow together?
Quite possibly. On the collection box set, there's a story about Katie sort of says her and John woke up and looked outside. And the way she says it, it sort of makes it sound like they were sharing quarters. But there's also other little things, like Christopher Barry used to tell a story about how when they were doing the Demons, he missed his sister's wedding because he wanted to have the weekend off, but Jon Pertwee had a fate to open or something like that. So it came for... And so that's a little hint of like, Jon's sort of stropping us in a way, or star power of him sort of going, well, no, you can't go to your sister's wedding because we need to shoot on this day because I've got to open a village fete or something like that. And it's like, I would think most people will go, you go to your sister's wedding, who cares about the village fate? But Jon Pertwee.
Yeah, and in Barry Letts does talk about him just taking props and the car off because he was opening a fete and putting all the running costs and the expenses down to the BBC, ordering taxis and just behaving like a very, big star, which the BBC reputedly was not very good at coping with, unless you're Greg Davis. Oh, political joke.
There is also, like, he takes a little dig at Tom here, and I often wonder about the sort of Pertwee, Tom Baker
animosity.
Yeah, and I think they're both on record as being difficult characters, and I think there was a bit of I think there was a bit of jealousy there on Pertwee's side because Tom was an even bigger success than he was. The one thing that Tom will only ever say about Jon is he'd never buy a drink, and I just thought that's the deepest dig you can get, isn't it? That it's tight with money.
It's an awful dig because it really says so much about someone's character and there's no way back from it, is there? Well, did you know far more than I do, Dylan, but my understanding was that Jon, the show was a big success. He'd done it longer than anybody else, but he just started to demand more and more money.
Yeah.
And it wasn't that he decided to leave because the party was breaking up. It's because the BBC wouldn't pay him any more money.
Yeah, exactly.
And then I think he expected it to not do very well. And there was this no-name actor, so he blanked him when the handover came. And then Mercurial Tom Baker just became a huge star over the next 3 years. So when he talks about slightly bitter about Wurzel Gummidge because he took it, Sean Sutton, he didn't want to know about it. Anyway, it became hugely popular, 12 million viewers, and when it was knocking Doctor Who into a cocked hat. But I was knocking myself because my repeats were on, and I'm thinking, bloody weren't they? So what's going on there?
No,
they didn't repeat Jon Pertwee stories in the 1980s because I'd have been all over it.
Like, short of the 5 Faces of Doctor Who, which would have been one story,
and they were on midweek evenings at 6 p.m. and it was a Saturday afternoon job.
There you go. No, I think he's telling tales. I think the underlying thing there is Wurzel was doing better than 80s Doctor Who in the ratings, which it was, to be fair, but
yes,
it's just a bit of a sly dig, isn't it? That doesn't need to be there.
It's unnecessary, isn't it?
But I don't want to end on a negative, and I don't think we will. So is it a clanger, a banger, or an average meander?
Well, alongside a nice cup of tea and a slice of cake, it's a banger.
It's a banger from me too. Right.
It is an absolute banger. I listen to it a lot. I obviously got my then girlfriend to listen to it because we still say, "Good God, man, you had it last." And I really, 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 really enjoyed listening to it. So I'll probably listen to it again in the car. I have a car that has a cassette player. And I'm going to force you to listen to it with me.
You're going to lock the doors and just drive me.
We're going to go. We're going to breeze into Hooverville with Jon Pertwee.
Too hot for TV.
Doctor Who at the BBC was published by BBC Audio, presented by Elizabeth Sladen, written by Michael Stevens, and produced by Michael Stevens. And it was released on the 1st of September 2003. News at the time, this will really tell you where we're at with things.
2003. So we're 10, what are we then? We're 14 years after the end of Survival.
Yeah.
Long time.
Yeah. Recording on Zagreus had just taken place, with many doctors and companions not reprising their roles but doing other things. And Lorraine Heggessy said she would like to bring back Doctor Who, but fears the rights situation is holding it up. The BBC cult team, who ran their website, then looked into it and found out that the rights basically lay with the BBC to make Doctor Who TV show.
Wow.
The next month, Doctor Who would be announced as returning back, and it is as a direct response of the BBC website, the Doctor Who website, going, people always say the rights, is it true? And just looking into it and going, it's not true.
God, so somebody in that web team needs a fucking pat on the back, don't they?
Exactly. So
who is the person?
I can't remember.
Where are they now?
Do you know what? I could be wrong, but it might be James Goss who writes the books. I could be wrong, but he was certainly involved in that team.
So if anybody knows, answers on a postcard to BBC Television 1978, London, W1A, 1AA.
Then merch at the time, we had the Big Finish stories Davros featuring the Sixth Doctor, Doctor Who Unbound, he jests at scars with the Valiard and Mel, and Doctor Who Unbound Deadline featuring David Jacobi. Then from Magic Bullet, we had Caldor City Checkmate.
Oh, yeah.
We had the Past Doctor book Wolfsbane featuring the Fourth Doctor Sarah and Harry, and Fallen Gods, which was a short novella from Tellus Publishing featuring the Eighth Doctor. And on DVD, we had the Two Doctors. The comic strip was an Eighth Doctor story featuring the curious tale of Spring Hill Jack. And then, something I've never heard of, a little snippet from Doctor Who magazine says McCoy risks it. Sylvester McCoy recently played the Seventh Doctor for BBC Three's Risky Business, where celebrities are analysed using animated emotions inside their head. Sylv's edition saw him voice the Doctor and pilot a CGI TARDIS.
No.
Bizarre. I have no idea what that is. It must exist somewhere out there, but just...
Your mission,
yeah.
007.
Oh, there'll be an episode on it before you know it.
Oh.
We're hurtling towards the 40th anniversary, where Doctor Who sort of seemed dead, but at the same time, there was a feeling in the water, even before this Lorraine Heggessy thing, of like, well, if it's ever going to be done, it's going to be around then. And I think most people thought maybe a 40th anniversary special, but obviously it took a bit longer. And just before the anniversary, they announced that the show's coming back.
Amazing. What time it was. It was the end of that long decade of nothingness.
Yeah. We knew we were getting a series, and the initial thing was, it's going to be 6 episodes, it might be 13, and it obviously was 13. And we didn't know it was going to be a success. It could have failed. It could have not found an audience.
Were you jaded at that time? When you heard Doctor Who's coming back and the BBC are doing it, were you like, yes, brilliant, bring it on? Or, yeah, I'll believe it when I see it?
Because it was properly announced, like there was a certain amount of, oh, is this just another rumour in the press? But because the BBC announced it on the Doctor Who website,
yeah, and
then there was an interview with Russell in the next issue of the magazine, I remember going, okay, this is a real thing, and they're going to do it. I thought things languish in development hell, and maybe it'd never show up, but it was like somebody somewhere is intending to make a series of Doctor Who. What about you?
I think I was a bit sort of ambivalent about it in respect of so many things in production for decades, don't they? I give you the Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy movie, which would take about 20 years, and then it was pants when it came out. So I think I was just thinking, and the way the BBC had treated Doctor Who in the previous decade had really been shit. So you'd had that documentary where a Brummy anorak talks you through it. You had the Dimensions in Time. Everything they'd done really since about 1989 had really not treated it very well, or with the respect or the budget or anything that it deserved. So it's coming back. You think, yeah, really? And will it be any good? Will it actually ever see the light of day? So I was sort of just watching interested, but I think I was protecting my inner Who child by not getting overexcited in case it broke my heart again.
Yeah.
I think that's what I was doing.
Yeah, no, there was that. And because the big thing had been, we'd had Curse of the Fatal Death, which was a lot of fun. It was an affectionate parody, I guess you'd say.
It was brilliant, yes. But parody.
Yeah, and then there'd been the Randall and Hopkirk reboot, which again was sort of an OTT affectionate parody, I think you'd say.
Yeah.
And so...
But rubbish, really.
Yeah, I mean...
Ultimately, not great.
I'm going to revisit it for an episode as we look at all the different sort of things that were a bit like Doctor Who at the time.
Yeah. Jonathan Creek, I've just been listening to Time Travellers.
I guess there was a sort of feeling that, what if it's like that?
Yes, that's exactly right. Yeah.
But then when it was like, it's going to be BBC One Saturday nights, I think part of me even then went, I'm not sure that's the right slot for it, because you don't get those sort of things.
Those days had gone.
Yeah, just like they have now. But
till they come back, I guess. If they do, we don't know, do we? Yeah, no, you're right. It was definitely... the moment I became a believer was when Christopher Eccleston was announced.
Yeah.
Because there's a proper actor, and not charisma casting, but an actor casting.
Yeah.
And it said, serious, proper actor, we're taking it seriously, but it isn't exactly like you think it's going to be.
Yeah.
It's not going to be wearing velvet, is it?
Yeah. I think one of the smartest moves that he did was, and even though eventually the Doctor wears velvet, not that Doctor, but, like, you're eased in with Eccleston.
Yeah.
And then David Tennant's a bit more classic series. And then Matt Smith's a bit more classic series. And like by the time Matt Smith's finished, he starts off looking like an indie kid. And by the end of it, he looks like somebody who was a classic Doctor Who.
He looks like somebody from a convention.
And then when you get to Capaldi, obviously he is the most...
old, classic.
Yeah, he's the most like a classic series Doctor.
Most like a Doctor.
Most like a classic series Doctor.
He's like... And... moment of Tom Bacon-ness, he has been interviewed saying, I won't go back because I'm Doctor Who, and somewhere in my mind I'm out there having adventures, which I love.
Yeah, he's a very, very sweet man with a very...
Best episode of Doctor Who for the last 2 or 3 years was Glastonbury, wasn't it? When he was on stage.
Yeah, very true. It was this thing, though, when I saw him, I was like, I didn't go, there's Peter Capaldi. I went, Doctor Who's on at Glastonbury.
Yeah. Well, and it was something to do with the sunnies that he had on. He had the same Ray-Bans on that his incarnation wore. Who knows if they were sonic, but you would think playing music they should have been. Yeah, he was he was Doctor Who on the stage for that. It was absolutely, it made my fanboy heart.
Because Matt Smith was at Glastonbury when he was the Doctor.
With Orbital, did the Doctor Who theme tune.
But I remember going, there's Matt Smith. It was like, there's Matt Smith, probably off his face, having a wonderful time at a festival. But with PCAP, I was like, Doctor Who's there.
It was brilliant. And then, irritatingly, some journalists from the NME interviewed him and the band, Franz Ferdinand, afterwards. I said, did you know he could sing? I think he's released 2 albums.
Yeah.
How annoying. And you're a music journal.
Yeah.
Come in.
Gosh, it's big in here. Outside it looks so small, but inside it's so sort of big.
Yes, well, it's dimensionally transcendental. You must be another applicant for the assistant's job.
That's right. I'm Jemima Katie.
Excellent. First hyphenated name today. Well, you've got the mousy hair, but that's side parting.
I'm sorry, Doctor. If I get the job, I promise it'll go straight into a centre parting.
Excellent, Jemima Katie.
Doctor!
What? What is it?
Behind you!
It's a yucca plant.
It looked just like the mother spider from the Ombudiominum dimension.
An easy mistake, Jemima Katie. I believe BBC Special Effects did actually use a yucca plant for that one. Now, what if it had been the mother spider?
Well, my platform boots would have stuck to the floor, causing me to hold my head in pain and perform a writhing pants people-like dance.
Very good indeed. A-levels?
None.
A-lines?
15, all pinafore, beige and polyester.
Roll neck jumper?
It's polyester, it's beige, and it's rubbish.
Perfect. Now I'm going to play you some eerie radiophonic workshop music.
Ah! Doctor!
Very good indeed, Jemima. Now then, you don't fancy me, do you?
Not a bit. I see you in a purely avuncular light.
Excellent. But, be a bit gruff with me sometimes. I rather like that. Now, you're scared of absolutely everything, aren't you?
Oh, yes. Especially those little dustbins with sore throats.
Yes, well, we're all scared of those, aren't we? Now, there is one last thing, my dear. When you get captured, it's absolutely vital that you quiver your lips a lot. Can you do that? Excellent, Jemima Katie. You've got the job. Well done. Oh, one last thing.
Could you make your thighs just a little bit chunkier?
Of course, Doctor, of course.
So, Doctor Who at the BBC. When did you first hear this?
Well, that is a very interesting question, Mr. Dillon. I bought the CD in 2003 and, bunged it in the car. By now I had progressed in life that I had a CD player in my car.
Snazzy.
Which means I've regressed over the last 20 years in so many ways. So, yeah, and I remember driving along, listening to it, and there was a moment, I don't know whether you want to talk about it, right, but there was a moment where I nearly had a car crash because of what came up on it. We'll touch on that in a moment. But I found it a bit of a curio because, first of all, I listened to it over a week going to and from work, and there's a moment halfway through CD one that I listened to as I was going to collect a Chinese takeaway, which obviously, as you do, and as you know, your dad will say Chinese takeaways are a great leveler because everybody goes to a Chinese takeaway, don't they? you meet the rich and the poor.
Indeed.
United in your hunger. So I find it a very curious thing. I find it curious because Elizabeth, as Tom would say, Elizabeth Sladen is at her most RP clipped breathiness.
Yeah.
But she does an introduction of 4.5 nanoseconds, and then you go straight into an hour-long repeat of a program that was made in 1993.
Yeah.
So that's wibbly-wobbly, timey-wimey, if ever I saw it.
Yeah, they did that the wrong way around, really. It should have been disc 1, here's all these interesting little things. Disc 2, here's the documentary.
Yes.
And you don't even need Elizabeth Sladen there. You just go...
You're right. It just feels not odd the way it's put together like that. And you just become comfortable with Elizabeth. And then you're straight into Nick, Courtney. And then you're 10 years ago, instantly. Yeah. So anyway, so you've got that. It's odd for that reason. The other bit I find amazing is all of those people we talked about who are no longer with us, who through the 90s loomed large in the Doctor Who landscape and told us all those well-worn stories we all know and love. And I haven't listened to any of that stuff for 20 years. And it made me happy and melancholy for the past.
Yeah, no, I get you. There is something about where you sort of fly through and you've got Verity Lambert and William Russell and Barry Letts and Terence Dix and Jon Pertwee, JNT, all these people just sort of telling the history of the show, hosted by Nick Courtney, and you're like, oh, these guys are... they were sort of omnipresent in the 90s.
To the point where you and we definitely had moments, I'm not, William Russell or and Fraser Hines was everywhere always.
Yeah, it still is.
Bother seeing him again. Yes, that's true.
And it was when the Doctor Who conventions that we went to would get someone like Brian Blessed or Jacqueline Pierce or even like Pamela Salem or something like that. Then it was a bit more like, oh, we need to go and see them. We've not seen them before. Whereas it's like, are we really going to see another Nick Courtney panel? And now I would kill for another Nick Courtney panel.
Yeah. Well, do you remember that time at Manchester? And there he was at the bar and we just sat and had a chat with him and a drink.
Yeah, what a guy.
I mean, and he's an absolute legend. Yeah. And he was there with I remember chatting to Elizabeth Sladen in the bar again. Yeah. With the daughter. Yeah. Whatever happened to her? And, she was lovely. They were all lovely, so generous with their time.
Absolutely.
And we didn't have to pay lots of money to have an autograph then.
No.
Or did we?
It was all included in the price. The photos you paid for because you're paying for a physical product. But I think it was only about a £5 or something.
Yeah.
It was before the monetization of the convention scene. I've paid a small fortune to go and meet Jodie Whittaker and Christopher Eccleston next year. And they're doing a con, but you pay for your separate autograph and photo. Yeah. And while it's not like one of those big Comic Cons where they're hundreds of pounds each, it's still...
I'm going to turn you around. I don't know if you can see that. There's Peter Capaldi's signature.
Oh, yeah.
Picture. And a nice picture of the web, Chris Achilles drawing of the Web of Fear signed by him in 2019.
Amazing. Love that.
Amazing.
And for free.
Yes.
So this thing really confused me and threw me because in my mind for many years this was something completely different. So I don't think I heard it at the time. I think after the show came back and it was everywhere and a huge success. Something like the Daily Mail did a giveaway where you collected tokens or whatever, and you got loads of free Doctor Who CDs. And my dad, being the loser that he is, collected them and duly sent me all these CDs. And there was this, and then there was a documentary about that they played on the radio before the show came back. And those two things are sort of melded in my mind and became wow. So in my mind, this was a history of Doctor Who on radio, but then very quickly came into this is what Doctor Who's going to be now. And it sort of looked at the past with a bit of disdain almost. But I don't think that either of those documentaries do that. And I've just so jumping into it, I was like, oh yeah, I do remember this. And I had heard it before.
Oh, right.
And as you say, sort of, there's a nostalgia there. There's a melancholy of sort of hearing those stories again. But it's quite a comfortable place to be, I think.
It's lovely. It felt very evocative of the even though it came out in 2003, but the first hours from 1993. So it just felt of that period of that era of being a fan where those people were at the conventions. The program wasn't on the air. We were only looking backwards and we were telling each other stories of its greatness and convincing ourselves it had got a future because some kids quite liked it because I discovered the DVDs or the videos.
Yeah. So why did you nearly crash your car when you first heard this?
Well, it's slightly embarrassing, this. But it gives me great pleasure to tell you that I am a piece of official BBC merchandise. So I went to it must have been the 30th anniversary or something. I've got to tell you this because I love telling you. I went to the 20th anniversary convention at Longleat in 1983 with my dad. That was lovely. Not many people did, just under 25,000. And then I got to London for the anniversary convention. And obviously, as I like a bit of cosplay, I'm there in that year's version of Tom Baker's outfit. And got interviewed by somebody, and then somebody else interviewed me. Just one of those. Have you got a comment about this? And they move on, and you don't think anything of it, do you?
No,
you don't think anything of it
because
that was in 1993. In 2003, I'm listening to this CD, and I've been listening to it for nearly an hour, and I'm on the way on a dark, wintry Friday evening to go and get the proverbial end of the week Chinese takeaway. It's 2003. I'm now married. So I've skipped from being single. I'm now married. I'm going to get the Chinese takeaway. Looking forward to eating a few prawn crackers on the drive home, which is naughty, but nice. And as I enter the village where the Chinese takeaway is, I hear my own voice in the middle of a compilation of people. I come after William Russell.
Incredible.
I think, and then followed by Louise Jameson or something like that. And I turned into Jon Pertwee character. And I had to stop, nearly crash, stop, rewind, listen. And I phoned my wife. And do you know what? She was not interested at all.
Well, you probably didn't have my number then, because I would have been very pleased for you.
How nickel-wettingly exciting it was. And eventually I played it to her. All she could say was, yeah, you see, 1993, you had a nice speaking voice. Now you sound like a brummie. All right.
That's that. It's amazing. So that documentary must have gone out on radio, and for whatever reason you didn't listen to it because, it wasn't like now where something goes out on the radio, it's on catch-up, and if it's not on catch-up, someone's uploaded it to YouTube a week later, and you can jump in. And also, I imagine you just completely forgot about it. Certainly a decade later, you've forgotten about it.
Yeah, I remember. Because I remember because I was on the telly-welly, to use a Jon Pertwee expression. I was on the telly-welly as being interviewed at a convention, I don't know, in about 1990, when the BSB Sky weekend which eventually, 30 years later, that footage appeared on YouTube, and I showed my daughter, and I thought she was going to die laughing, looking at her 21-year-old dad being serious about Doctor Who. Yeah, so, you get interviewed occasionally, don't you? Different people with cameras. You don't know whether it's a BBC thing, or the students, or the organisers, and most stuff just ends up on the cutting room floor. So, forgot all about it.
And there were cameras at every event we went to. Yeah. And a lot of that footage never, ever to be seen,
Absolutely. And I am used to, as I'm sure you are, but you're more handsome than what I use, but I am used to being not, and the cameras do not find me in any way. So.
No, same. I remember there was a convention we were at in the late 90s, either a Panopticon or a Battlefield. It was in Coventry. And there was a BBC Choice, which was a precursor to BBC Three.
Oh,
we're doing a Doctor Who night, and I've got that Doctor Who night.
Have you?
Yes, recorded off the telly at the time, and then digitized many years later. And there's little bits of the convention which are fun to see. I'll send it you because it'll awaken some memories.
But, but we're not in it.
Not really. So Jackson was interviewed for it, but they didn't use the footage because he would have been like 8 or something at the time. But there is...
He's fabulous Peter Davidson.
Yeah, exactly. But there is footage of the main convention hall, and you can see me and Jackson walking down the middle to go and take a seat somewhere. And also on one of the collection box sets, one of the Sylvester McCoy ones, there's a panel from one of the Panopticons, and the camera pans around the room at one point, and you can just make out a very blurry me and Jackson, but I don't know where you were. But weirdly, I could also see my English teacher who used to go to these things as well.
No way.
But, obviously...
Yeah, well, I like you. Whenever there was footage, or whenever footage of a convention of the past comes out, I just scan it to see if I can see you and me.
Yeah, exactly.
No.
But, but especially on those collection box sets, pretty much every bit of footage that they've used from a 90s convention, I'm like, we were in that room. I remember being there. Like, on the Robots of Death one, there's a panel from when they did the first DVD release, which was late 90s, I think, and they did a big panel and they got all the cast back together. And it was like, we were in that room. We're not, obviously, the camera's more interested in the people on the stage.
The stars. You don't realise, do you? And then they're not historically important, except to people like us, but the conventions, they always held something interesting.
Yeah.
So to have been in the room when Paul McGann was announced, or he was going to Big Finish, or a DVD, they were earth-shaking moments for us, weren't they? Brilliant! Weren't conventions brilliant?
They were. I remember, I was thinking the other day about when they got the guy who played the pirate captain in The Pirate Planet, and it's like such a sort of bit part in Doctor Who. I mean, a memorable villain, but not a classic villain, I guess you'd say.
No.
And it's just like, to sort of have that moment where he was still, again, he was telling his stories for the first time. And now if you got to an event and he was still alive, he'd be 80 and his memories would have faded. And it was just like, a new guest that felt like they really knew about the show and things were still fresh in their minds. It's like all of that footage, like, where is it all? I want to see it all. I want to spend 2 weeks just watching every convention we went to.
All over again.
Yeah, exactly. Looking out for us.
You'd have to queue up on the stairs for an hour before you've watched each film, wouldn't you? Just to get the full authentic experience.
Exactly. Of the Learfrick Hotel.
The Learfrick Hotel, no longer there.
No, now it's a Primark. Anyway, we digress.
Sorry, viewers.
No.
There aren't any viewers. Do you know why? It's a podcast.
It's a podcast. It's an audio format about audio formats. So, once the documentary's over, we get a second disc that is full of oddities from Doctor Who's radio. And this is where the really good stuff is. And they do a couple more volumes after this that also contain some interesting stuff.
It is full of gold, isn't it?
Absolutely. And we start off with a couple of Terry Nation things. And Terry Nation's someone that I don't think I ever saw at a con, because he'd moved to LA by that point. Had you ever seen Terry?
No, he disappeared. He was too big a star.
Yeah, exactly. So it was just quite nice to hear him talk and just sort of I've seen little interviews with him before, but it's always the same one from Wicker's World or whatever it was.
Yeah.
And because, I mean, all this stuff would be a DVD extra now, but this sort of thing, if it was visual, they would have shown that, like, they loved showing bits of things like that, conventions. They later put it on DVDs and things like that. Whereas audio stuff, like, I don't think, again, I'd ever really considered that there would be this treasure trove of bits of radio programs that contain Doctor Who interviews and sketches and snippets and things like that. So it was just great to dip into it.
Yeah, I found it was a smorgasbord of little delicacies, wasn't it? Of Terry Nation sounding sensible and serious and talking about Tony Hancock. There he is again.
Yeah.
And falling out with him and then going back and writing the Daleks. Fascinating. And what was also interesting is really how terrible most of the BBC interviewers were and what shy questions they are.
Absolutely. Especially the stuff from the 70s is very much Doctor Who's a kids' show. Like, we're not going to waste too much time asking serious questions to these industry professionals. It's all, what's your favourite monster and things like that.
It is. Interestingly, there were some terrible questions asked of Tom Baker and Romana. And Tom was both irritated by the dull question, but generous enough to let Mary Tam do some of the talking. I thought that was quite revealing.
Yeah.
That was a nice surprise.
Absolutely, because again, she's new to it all, whereas he's been asked these questions 1,000 times by this point.
Yeah. But he wasn't being starry, and it's all about me, and I am the star. He let her have her moment, and that was very generous.
And there's a very interesting moment where Tom is interviewed on the set of the Sontaran experiment, or on location for the Sontaran experiment. And he talks about the Doctor regenerating, but he uses the word transmogrified and re-scrambled. Because again, the word regeneration, it was introduced in the Pertwee era, I want to say. It's Planet of the Spiders, I think, is the first time it's properly mentioned.
Yeah, I believe you're correct.
We talk about regeneration as this thing that's named in the show, and everybody knows, even if they don't know Doctor Who, they know that's what's happened. But that wasn't a fixed term yet. So it was he was re-scrambled, which I thought was brilliant.
And it's also those early interviews with Tom are before he's got it, he's become the raconteur. He hasn't got. He talks about him being a Time Lord, and then he says, he's been transmogrified or something. He hasn't got the Time Lord from the constellation of Castorberus, the planet of Gallifrey. He hasn't got that down pat yet, which is fascinating. So it's a very early, not completely formed Tom Baker, who's still a serious actor.
And we get a bit of Pertwee towards the end of he's just about to film Planet of the Spiders,
where he reveals that it was his decision to make the programme more serious and aim at older children.
Which, again, John always bigging up his part, perhaps. And he claims the show's science accurate.
Yes. Allosauruses and Brontosauri.
It's also very sweet hearing a bunch of kids in the 70s talk about the show as well. Just,
isn't it? A jelly monster.
A jelly monster.
Who knew that Russell T Davies would bring them back?
There is a surprising lack of 80s stuff. There are obviously the 80s Doctors feature in the first documentary, but there's no real sort of skits from the Colin Baker or the Sylvester McCoy era. And I'm wondering where we're at in the history of the show. That era is still sort of seen as a failure by the BBC.
Yes, I'll tell you what I found interesting. I think you make an excellent point there, and I agree. It felt, the underlying feeling was the golden years were the 70s. And most of the clips come from those golden years. And possibly the audience listening to it, maybe they were thinking, well, you are going to remember the 70s because you're now a bit older.
Yeah.
And, we want you to love the programme again. What was particularly jarring for me was when the narrator talks about Tom Baker taking over the fourth Doctor, his fourth incarnation, and he talks about meeting the Daleks when it really took off, Genesis of the Daleks, and meeting Davros, their creator. And then they play Terry Malloy.
Yeah.
Really felt terribly incongruous.
Yeah.
And slightly shocking.
Yeah, because you almost go, Well, it's because nobody cares at the same time. Someone's gone down to the BBC archive who doesn't know about Doctor Who, had to find a clip of Davros, whatever that is, and that's the first thing he's come across.
And it's him shouting about the Daleks, and it sounds about right. Yeah. He's a mad shouty man. The other bit I've got to tell you, the other bit that I find mildly irritating is that Radio 4's Today programme, when they've got Douglas Adams on.
Yeah.
And they said Douglas, who wrote for Doctor Who and was in the project early. Oh, yeah, he was. Yeah, it started in 1963 and he joined it in 1978. Jesus Christ.
Yeah, I did like that little Tom Baker and Douglas Adams bit. And as you said earlier, Tom Baker's in full raconteur mode at that point and laughs at what Douglas has had.
Oh, it's lovely, isn't it? Oh, there's Douglas trying to, flatter. Oh, I'm a big star in Abu Dhabi, but I don't know how to turn it to my advantage. It's so lovely. I could listen to that on repeat.
Yeah,
I love it.
Really great.
Douglas Adams, though, we were lucky to have write some of the programme, weren't we?
Yeah. And Stephen Moffat said an interesting thing, that had Douglas lived, he would have been the classic Doctor Who writer that everybody tried to get back, first of all, because he was that good and would have still been a relevant individual at that point. I think he's absolutely the person you go to write your Christmas special one year or something like that. And it's just a shame he died so young.
It is, because he was, without it being I love Douglas Adams so much. So clever, so interested in life and interested in new things, able to extrapolate it, make it logical, and then bitingly clever dialogue.
Yeah.
Yeah, superb.
And when you see him interviewed, you're just like, what a brilliant, interesting, funny man. And any new bit of Douglas Adams, I'm always just excited to see, because he's just somebody...
If only we'd got Douglas Adams and Tom Baker, who obviously hit it off. If only we'd had them with a decent production crew who took it seriously, like they did in the Hinchcliffe era, and with better budgets. Yeah. How great could Doctor Who have been then?
Yeah, but it's also that thing of, that was also the most viewed era of the show because of industrial action and things like that. So sometimes when, as wonderful as that era is, you've got to wonder whether that's where Doctor Who's reputation for becoming a bit cheap and a bit camp comes from, is actually these things that we love. But because that was the most people saw of it, that they were, it's hard to walk away from Nightmare of Eden or even Destiny of the Daleks and going, that's a bit of cheap rubbish. Even though the next season, whether you love it or loathe it, it suddenly looks a lot more expensive again once they've.
And to be fair, the tonal shift to being, funny, more humorous and less scary, that was forced upon the show. And with rampant inflation, everything looked a bit shit for a couple of years in the late 1970s.
Yeah, absolutely.
Every programme had really appalling production values, and the BBC became an underfunded, a factory for cheap throwaway telly. And Doctor Who suffered like most other things did.
And you won't hear me stick up for the current era of Doctor Who very often, but when people talk about eras infected by inflation, the cost of making television has gone up about 40% in the last 5 years. Yeah. So you could understand why they've suddenly got a bigger budget, but it somehow looks cheaper. And I imagine one day when we hear the real behind-the-scenes stuff, they'll go, well, yeah, we had all this money, but everything costs more money. So we ended up with something that didn't look as good as the last 10 years of the show had.
Yeah, and there are always lots of behind-the-scenes issues that nobody is aware of. I mean, we didn't get very much of him in the first season because he was contractually obliged to be doing other things. So you just know that timings went out the window. Yeah. And there were all sorts of other problems. It's a bit like I'm a James Bond fan, not as big, obviously, because it's not as good as Doctor Who, but I do like James Bond very much. You had Skyfall, which was the highest grossing Bond movie, absolutely fantastic. They go off to Spectre. They get more money, 250 million they spent on it, highest ever spend of a movie. And it's a clusterfuck because they didn't get the script right. They were late. There was shooting while they were writing the script. They had 5 different writers. So things go wrong, don't they?
Yeah,
In creative endeavour.
absolutely.
And you've still got to get a product on the screen.
And the whole world after Skyfall was like, we all want to see what next, because it was a big anniversary. And so, as people do with sort of much loved properties, people that haven't watched it for 10 years come in and go, we're getting behind this. And then you turn on Spectre and you're like, oh, this isn't what it, you know. In my opinion, they pulled it back for his final film, but this isn't a James Bond.
Yes. Roger Moore. Roger Moore. I'd like to have seen Roger Moore as an elderly doctor. That would have been quite funny, wouldn't it?
Absolutely. He would have been great.
What are you doing? I'm keeping the Gallifrey in it.
Yeah, we talk about the Doctor being an asexual hero in the classic series. If Roger Moore had played the part, it certainly wouldn't have been.
No. All right, then. Well, I've got off that idea in that case, because two things occurred to me, actually, when Tom, dragging it back to the CD, when Tom Baker's 1977 personage talks about the actor not progressing, not having character development, and he must never be needlessly violent.
Yeah.
Stand up, Colin Baker. That was that was a misfire. And not really being too interested in that sexual side of things. I thought, oh yes, well, interesting.
Yeah,
because there are bits I found uncomfortable. The first time I found Doctor Who really deeply uncomfortable, and I didn't like it, was that opening those scenes with Colin Baker's Doctor attacking Perry and strangling her and being violent, and it just felt wrong.
Yeah, it's just the wrong message to send to kids.
Yeah, and there've been moments in the new series where I didn't mind the kiss in the TV movie, but there've been moments of through all the Doctors where they've done things a bit too sexy that I felt. Peter Capaldi saying, "I'm not your boyfriend" to Clara, and she said, "I never thought you was." And he said, "I never said it was your mistake." Like, what? Really?
Yeah, I do wonder how much of the Doctor not being a sexual creature in the classic series is just down to television not being as sex and relationship driven, especially in a family show.
Well, I would bounce at your superior knowledge as a TV industry professional.
But that doesn't take away from the fact that for 26 odd years he was an asexual character. Like
he was a benevolent alien, as Tom Baker would.
But because everybody making Doctor Who in black and white would have rather made it in colour, but they couldn't. But it doesn't suddenly make you go, well, all of that era needs to now be in colour. I know they're doing the colorizations or what have you, but it's like, it's as much a product of its time, and the newer stuff is a product of its time, and I think sometimes they get it right and sometimes they get it wrong.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, totally.
As happened in the classic series.
Yes, totally. And at the moment, it's not so much for me, and it may well be the next time it comes round, and that will be lovely. Or it might not be.
Yeah, although it turns out...
Or I might, of course, be dead by the time it returns.
Or it turns out it might not have been for everybody at all, but I'll cut that bit. It is interesting.
No, go on, leave it in. It don't make sense for others.
We get a couple of snippets of the radio dramas that they had at the time. So we get Ghost of End Space, Paradise of Death, Exploration Earth.
We also get some lovely comedy skits as well, didn't we?
Absolutely. And these were...
what was it, Jemima Katie?
Yeah.
What a great name.
So, that skit, my dear old Uncle Kev recorded that off the radio when it went out, because he'd heard Jon Pertwee was coming up and recorded it for me. So I had that on tape for years before I heard this.
No way.
And then when I finally heard this, I'd completely forgotten about it because all my tapes were in a box somewhere, and, it was all about CDs.
So do you think of Kevin?
Yeah, I do. I did. Yeah, I was like, oh, God, I've forgotten about this even this time round. And I was like, it's a very funny little skit of Jon Pertwee sort of playing the Doctor, sending up the part. And it's just a lot of fun.
Just for your fan base needs to know that Kevin was A, utterly lovely, and B, a massive train spotting nerd. So nerdery is definitely in your DNA, isn't it?
It runs in the family. And when he passed away, he left a few things, and one of them was a set of just Lord of the Rings books from like the 50s or something like that. So not first editions that are worth a fortune or anything like that. But in it were little letters that he'd written to the publishers about just having various questions about the world, and then the responses he got back. So not only had he kept copies of his letters that he wrote, he kept the responses as well. And it's like, I was like, you nerd, this runs in the family.
That is fantastic.
Yeah, what a nutter.
Well, we love nutters, don't we, Dylan?
Indeed.
Being nutters after all. Because I am a man who's just come on your show and waived a receipt he's kept since 1996. Nutter!
There was a skit on there called The Enthusiasts, and it was mocking Doctor Who fandom about them calling in and trying to block the BBC switchboards, which was an actual thing Doctor Who fans did on their Doctor Who Day of Action. And that is sort of the sole representation of 80s fandom in a way on this on this thing.
Angry activists.
Yeah. Very, very...
But Doctor Who fandom did have a dark, angry underbelly, didn't it? Which I'd found very distasteful.
Yeah, the whole DW...
The whole...
The DWB, yeah. Actually, like, even things like the DWAS, there was quite a ownership in the late 80s, certainly. By the 90s, I think it sort of dissipated slightly. And I think it's because fandom comes of age, and it's not a bunch of 12-year-olds, it's a bunch of 20-somethings who think they're right. And actually, they're not. Also, when the show comes back, you get a whole influx of new fans. And it's suddenly a populist thing again, where, like, actually being... The whole culture around being a nerd's kind of changed in the early noughties, didn't it?
It became okay, didn't it?
Mm.
If not, almost cool to be a bit nerdy.
Absolutely. And it was like... It wasn't just Doctor Who. It was all the superhero films that were happening. And, television was full of your Prime Evils and the Fades and all these other things, these big sci-fi shows. And American television was doing The Walking Dead and all these other things.
Well, and also, if you look at the cultural landscape that we are operating in, having being a fan of semiotics and cultural insight, you think about the 70s and 80s, the dominant male masculinity was often presented, and success was presented through quite an aggressive, dominant narrative.
Mm.
If you look post the dawn of the internet, the geeks have been taken over the world, haven't they? They've invented Microsoft and Google and Facebook, and it's okay to be geeky. Yeah. It's okay to be nerdy about stuff, and it's just changed the narrative. And it's nice because you don't get beaten up for being a Doctor Who fan or chased around the school. Not that it ever happened to me. No.
It's also a thing of, like, when I was dating in my 20s, everybody was like...
Said no Doctor Who fan ever.
It was still a bit of a thing of like, oh, you're into that. Whereas when I was dating in my 30s, for instance, it was... By that point, everyone was like, it's so cool you've got this interest. And what, you wrote a book on it? You did a podcast? I'm like, I don't care about it. But it's like, it kind of shows... I mean, it shows that you're good at commitment, I guess.
Oh, I've never thought. Yeah. Loyal, commitment and loyalty.
Yeah, I can dedicate my entire life to something. It could be a relationship. It's not. It's Doctor Who.
Could be you.
And of course, also what we get here is a Dead Ringers skit now.
Oh, isn't it brilliant?
I think one day there's probably a full Too Hot for TV on the Dead Ringers Doctor Who skits. But it's nice to be reminded of when they started to appear around the early noughties again. And again, Doctor Who was something to be mocked, but this was a loving, affectionate mocking of it. And I just really enjoyed revisiting, because I haven't heard any of these for about a decade.
I totally agree. John Coleshaw does the most lovely, warm, caring, beautifully observed pastiches, doesn't he, of Doctor Who? You will have done, but my favourite is the one after the 50th anniversary with Jacob Dudman. And are you putting the kettle? He puts the kettle on.
Yeah.
And he's sending everybody. That's how we did it in my day. Oh, it's wonderful. Yes, that Tom Baker. I listened to that in the car and just loved his Tom Baker.
Yeah.
And you could tell it was off the cuff.
Yeah, absolutely. And what I'd love to know is how many versions of those skits were there where the person put the phone down straight away.
Yeah, because it felt like the gentleman at the other end of the line was playing along.
But I think he gets it.
He did his job,
Yeah.
didn't he?
Because when the Sylvester McCoy one happens, it's great fun. You know, he goes, have you been in the pub? And obviously, like, the big one was when he actually called Tom himself. And you've got to wonder, like, is it set up? It doesn't, a lot of the time, it doesn't feel set up. It feels like...
I would just wonder if the Tom Baker one was set up. Would Tom really react like? I don't know. You don't know, do you?
But
have to find out. Another mission for you.
Yeah, I know that John Coleshaw said in an interview once that he bumped into Tom going in and out of a voiceover studio in Soho around this time, and Tom was quite affectionate about it and sort of said, "Oh, well, if I drop down dead, you can take over." You know, it's.
Oh, he does do Tom with great affection. It's not the best voice,
no,
Tom, but it's got the essence of him.
Yeah,
what you want. It's done with great affection and great wit.
Yeah,
and he's Doctor Who knowledge is so much that you know he can just riff with the guy. He's pure evil.
Is there much more you want to say on this one?
Yes, it made me nostalgic for the 90s. I loved hearing all those clips. It was lovely to hear Tom Baker's progression. I'm not a JNT fan, but it's always interesting to hear his point of view on things, which was good. It was lovely to hear all the old companions. I loved it, really.
Yeah.
And it reminded me that there are eras and they come and go. And the 90s was an era where we went to conventions and we looked at the past, and then suddenly we were catapulted into the future, and it was exciting.
Absolutely.
And we're going to go through that again, I think, in some way. We're going to have a little bit of downtime, and then at some point, who knows when, we'll be catapulted into a new and exciting future. We'll all get excited again.
Exactly.
But meanwhile, we're going to be talking about Stephen Moffat too much, aren't we? And listening to Matt Smith at conventions.
Indeed.
I wonder, it did also make me wonder who from the modern era that was amazing have we lost? Like Mr. Pickwoad, who was the designer that created that wonderful TARDIS interior.
John Hurt.
I wonder how many other people have gone. John Hurt,
one of the directors of photography died recently. Not something you really had on a classic series, but would have had interesting stories to tell. And I think those are the people you'll see at conventions when they're retired, because it'll be a nice little earner for them. And we'll get different sort of, you know, it'll be the production designers and the costume designers and the supporting actors rather than... we will get the doctors, but they'll be at the expensive ones, you know. Certainly when you're travelling to Derby to a convention 15, 20 years' time, I imagine it'll be more behind-the-scenes people than doctors. But you never know. And it's just like, so there are stories already lost to time.
Shame, isn't it?
Oh,
it's sad.
I worked on a Christmas film a few years ago with the DOP who did a bunch of Matt Smith's second season. And I only spoke to him about it for about 10, 15 minutes, but he was just telling me, not gossip, just all these wonderful stories about going out. He did the one where they went out to America and stuff like that. And the chaos of, like, you want to get all these beautiful shots, but you've got like 2 days to get them all. And it was just like, those stories are yet to properly be told, I think.
Yeah, I did a photo shoot. I must have told you this, but I did a photo shoot for an advertising campaign. And one of the models that we had in had done some extra work during Peter Capaldi's second season. So, you know, when he comes in playing the guitar on the tank, sidebar, how fucking cool was that? Close sidebar. He was in the audience, and he said how brilliant Peter was, how he got to know everybody, introduced himself, knew what he was doing, and it was just utterly lovely. And he said he came back 3 months later to be an extra in another scene. He'd had a couple of conversations with Peter Capaldi, and Peter came over and instantly said, "How you doing? How's your daughter? Because she wasn't very well when I last saw you." And he remembered.
A lot of people say that about Capaldi, that he's one of those people that led the company and wanted to get to know everybody.
Yes. And it's lovely to hear those stories.
We must rate this. Is it a clanger, a banger, or an average meander?
It is a 1970s to 1990s filled a nostalgic banger.
Indeed. Same as you. It was just lovely to revisit those people, those times, and, you know, many times that I'd not visited.
And me.
And you. Got a double dose of you.
Who just nobody wants that, do they?
I tell you what it did make me do, though, is go, I must revisit the other Doctor Who at the BBC's, because there were 2 more volumes.
I thought the same thing. I didn't think that after the Nicholas Courtney element. It was the second disc, as you rightly say, is full of nuggets of jewels. Yeah, a really lovely thing.
Because that documentary, truthfully, it's nice to revisit, but I don't think I need to hear it again, you know? Like, it's not, you're not gaining anything new from it.
No.
Too hot for TV.
You've got nothing to push. You've got nowhere to guide people on the internet. So.
No. I am a pariah.
You're like the Watcher.
Yeah.
Next time, I'll be joined by Rod Brown, and we're going to be looking at the many comedic takes on Doctor Who. Well, until next time, I've been Dylan.
And Nigel.
And this has been Doctor Who Too Hot for TV.
Too hot for TV.
Straight to Nick Briggs, don't you? Yeah.
Nick Courtney. You're obsessed with Nick Briggs.
God. I am. I've had the restraining order and I can't get near him anymore. Yes.
Too hot for TV.
Are you all right? Do you want to have a wee, get a drink, anything like that before we move on? Or...
I'm good.
Excellent.
Power on.
Fantastic.
Power.
So,
are we doing okay?
Yeah,
are you happy?
I'm very happy. That was a lot of fun.
Is the producer part of your head happy with the performance?
I'm very happy with the performance. I think it's going to be great.
Excellent.
Let's make magic.
I didn't. When you were talking about, I nearly got out. I thought I wouldn't.
Unfortunately, where I am, I have no Doctor Who stuff around me because I'm just they've just rented me a flat. But usually when I'm at home, I've got my man cave behind me.
I was going to say, would you like, I've got a bit of Doctor Who-iness. Can you see that?
I can, yeah.
A bit of some Doctor Who-ness going on there.
What a fantastic selection.
A little collectionette. In fact, I should have got, I think my Doctor Who, the 3.
Ooh. Oh, you just
tried to stop me off. Jon Pertwee's autograph on one of those Target books somewhere. That's quite nice. Oh, and of course, I should have been waving my pink Pertwee at you.
Quite, but I can pretend that you were. That's just the magic of audio.
You can just go, ooh.
So,